Hello everyone, this is the Follies Las Locuras Mexican movie. It's been just released, and if you wonder what it's about, I'm going just, explain you everything, but without like huge spoilers, because this movie is just, you know, a perfect story about a woman called Rinata who's been placed under house arrest. So let's talk about more in details. The woman, Renata, the main character, and the story actually starts with her. And this moment exactly when she was able to reunite with her loved one, but to get to that point we need to realize basically how she basically managed to, you know, let this friend of yours in, and how she was able basically to escape her house arrest, how she was able basically to run away from her father, who is basically overprotecting Renata because um, she was placed under that house arrest. And so to begin with, basically the Fallis Las Locuras movie is a recent project, and it's about a woman, Rinata, under house arrest, awaiting trial for public affray. She is described as being on the brink of a manic episode and spends her time goofing in front of her barred woman, in front of her barred window, or screaming to be let out. So this is basically her situation. He is under house arrest. She is writing. She writes. She writes a lot, and basically, she is of course having this thing on her leg, and the only basically access to the outside world is through that window. Basically, this is the only thing she has, and she can basically communicate somehow with other people outside, but it's not like, the freedom, or even, it's not even a normal communication. So she is seeking basically to get out of this place, but she is of course under this house arrest for a reason, and basically she was put under this house arrest for something like public affray. And basically she is meeting a lot of people who is just passing by her window, and she is interacting and getting to know the people. And first people that she met in this movie, they were actually veterinarians that were basically passing by her window, and they stopped because basically they thought that she was a hostage, that she was basically kidnapped by someone because of the barred window and everything. But she was just asking them to let her call, and she basically asked for a phone. And once basically they gave Renata a phone, she called one of her friends, and that friend was of course her loved one, her, like, let's say, secret lover. But at this point basically the movie is just not explicitly revealing the person she's calling, or she is just leaving this message. But she was able basically to somehow make really sensitive comment on these veterinarians and their work, because all they do basically is putting like animal, dogs, suffering dogs, basically, uh, that suffering to sleep. They put basically pets to sleep. They do that, and she kind of, made really sensitive comment on whether they really just enjoy that, you know, whether they really like the job, or if this is like giving them like a sense of control, putting animals to sleep. So she was able basically behind that window get into one of those veterinarians' head and kind of impact the rest of the day of that veterinarian, because we can see in this movie the story of that veterinarian, and that separate story just shows how this one single conversation between Renata and these two persons basically setting like that other story of that veterinarian, and how she is basically under that affection of what Renata just said to her. And this is gonna be the pretty much the center of the movie, even though this is like simultaneously occurring at the same, like simultaneously occurring in one specific like day in Mexico City, and 8 or like multiple women basically experience different stories, different like troubles. And we can basically see her sister, for example, arriving, and her sister Soledad basically brought her some food, but her sister is of course also a part of this movie, and she has her separate story. So you can see basically her in this story of Renata's, but she has her separate storyline as well. And basically her sister is an actress, and Soledad as an actress basically she was basically offended by Renata's comments about her job and her career, and Renata basically said that there is no better actor than any human being, because like we are constantly pretending and just pretending to be someone we are not, and like this is pretty much acting. And she made this comment basically and somehow offended her sister, because her sister basically got it wrong, because she thought basically that means basically that anybody can be a good actor, and that her job is somehow downplayed, by Renata. But at the same time, Renata basically shows perfect acting herself as a character within this story. She is basically doing the perfect job while convincing her sister that basically if you're really a good actress, you don't need any explanation of why Renata basically did that, public affray that put her under this house arrest. So basically she explained to her sister that if you're really a good actress, you don't need any explanation to understand something that is like not beyond understanding, something that is human, something that is like so related to your job as an actress, because you constantly just putting yourself, in someone's story and trying to basically replicate it to copy or to mimic that story. So they basically got into this huge argument, and she basically kicked her out of the place. And after that, basically, Renata got to visit her psychiatrist. And this is another interesting moment, because basically Renata basically giving a huge therapy to her psychiatrist. It looks like Renata is the psychiatrist, not her, not the person that came, but Renata is understanding more than like any just casual person. And basically she is immediately just, telling the core reason of your manic episode, or whatever it's called, of your bipolar. But she doesn't think that she's bipolar, but she understands, she knows the reason why she needs psychiatrist, even though she doesn't want this specific psychiatrist, but she knows the reason. And she tells basically that her mother left Rinata and her sister like 30 years ago or something like this, and never basically came back. So this could be the reason, the main core of her troubles and of her behavior. And even though she doesn't think that she is bipolar, in this basically movie, her behavior and the way basically she is acting tells otherwise. And she seems pretty worked up. It's like at the same time she thinks and rationalize everything. Like she can be pretty wise and she can be really smart about a lot of things, but the way basically she's doing that is just so intense, and sometimes it seems like she's not stable, but she can give basically a really good conversation to anybody in this movie. Even though this is her psychiatrist, she can easily just make this session, for example, way easier for her psychiatrist by giving her the answers that that psychiatrist wants to hear. And she gave her basically everything she needed. And at this point, basically this therapy ended. And that was basically the most interesting, I would say, conversation of the whole movie. But the most interesting action of this movie, of course, is gonna be later, because the woman basically that Renata left that message for is this character Miranda. And basically Miranda is a secret lover of Renata's, but at this point basically Miranda, she doesn't know that Renata was under house arrest. She doesn't even know that Renata was in any trouble with police. But now basically she received that message, and she is about to basically make this detour, because she wants basically to stop by Renata's and to check on her. So this is like, in the middle of her and her mother's trip to a clinic, because her mother basically just she was just under an surgery, and after that surgery they went basically directly to Renata's, even though that was like not planned, but she stopped by Renata's and she is still not aware of her friend or her lover is under that house arrest. And she thinks that this is just, some precautionary measures or whatever to basically meet her by this window. So basically, once Rinata met her friend, met Miranda, and that was obvious that they are not just friends, because at this point, when they reunited, they just, they tried basically to get some privacy. And once basically Renata was done with her therapy, her father is kind of the only, I would say, constrained, because even though she is under house arrest, the only real constraint is her father, because she is just, being watched by her father 24/7, and he is so overprotective. And basically, he can be easily convinced that Renata needs like this therapy. She needs to be like, overprotected and everything. And basically this way, her father can basically get reduced sentence for his daughter if her like bipolar proved. If it's really bipolar, she can basically get reduced sentence. And if it's proved otherwise, she can go to a prison and just serve as a normal person. I mean, like, not bipolar. So basically she has two choices: to go to a prison or to stay home and, keep being under this house arrest. But if it's house arrest, if it's bipolar, she needs to be taking medication, which is kind of making you brain dead. It's literally just what she said. So going to a prison, being crazy in a prison, or staying home and brain dead. Not a lot of choice, actually. But at least she was able basically to get her friend in her living room. And this living room basically was designed initially to host guests, but after her arrest, she moved, as far as I understand, she moved into this living room, and now it's kind of mess because all the things just, everything just, thrown around, and it seems like chaos. And she lives in this room basically, but it doesn't seem like she only, attached to this one specific room, because house arrest doesn't mean that you cannot just enter, that you cannot just, walk freely and just, enter other rooms. Your house arrest basically is just attached to this specific house, this apartment or whatever. But the only access to the outside world, of course, still this window, and the only communication she could have basically have with your girlfriend or your secret lover is that window. And basically, this is why to get your friends in this living room is a huge actually achievement, because nobody else is basically allowed to visit her but her therapist, her sister. And now basically she reunited with Miranda, while basically Miranda keeping her mother, who is basically after a surgery, waiting her outside. And Miranda basically has her family, children, and her mother outside waiting, as I told you. But they basically use this moment, and even though a lot of a lot of moments unshown and a lot of conversations left behind this scene, but still the whole story about Miranda, her house arrest, how she is basically being kept in this living room or just in this house, and how she is trying basically to still get any possible access to the outside world. This whole story is just perfectly written, and at the same time it's not only about one character, because a lot of different characters, all women, they basically go through some dramas, some dilemmas, and all their storylines somehow intertwine. And this whole movie is just, it's about interconnectedness of all the characters, but the core character, the anchor of this movie is of course Renata, because everybody somehow passing by her window, everybody just somehow ran into Rinata. And this is one of those characters, but this is just a woman who is about to buy this place. She wants basically to buy this apartment, and she came basically to make an offer for Renata's father and his wife, or his girlfriend, because this is not Renata's mother. As I told you before, Renata's mother basically left Renata and her sister long ago, which is still impacting Renata's life, and she sees that as a core reason of her behavior, and this is even the core of her therapy, something that basically she gave up to her therapist to save her time, because therapy is usually just focused on revealing that core issue of someone's life. So she pretty much self-aware of what situation she is into, and she knows exactly that she is not bipolar. She knows exactly that she doesn't need any medication. She knows that she just stood up for an innocent woman, because she actually just stood up for a woman in the market, and she was trying to basically she she was trying basically to protect that woman from being discriminated, and she stood up for that woman. But the one who was arrested was Miranda, and Rinata. Renata was the one arrested. And after that, basically, public affray, she was placed under this house arrest. And now, basically, this house attracted this woman because she sees this perfect opportunity to buy this place and kind of make over it and just fix everything and make it even better place. And she's making an offer to Renata's father, but she's not aware that basically in the living room of this house, in the living room, there is a woman who is just under house arrest. And the living room seems pretty messy, and they try basically to make it seem like there is nobody living in this living room, even though this is pretty much obvious that the place just is so messy and there is obvious somebody is just staying in this room. But Renata, she was basically able to not only convince, but she was able to make this potential buyer, comfortable, because Renata is in financial department. She is working in finance, and she knows exactly how the industry works. She was able to basically talk about a lot of things related to housing and how to convince basically that this place worth more than they think it is. She was able basically to give a really good, I would say, introduction of this place. She knows the history of the neighborhood. She knows exactly what houses can be better choice for that woman. It seems like she doesn't want this place to be sold to that woman or to anybody. And since she is under her house arrest, she wants to just keep this house arrest within this place and not changing this place anytime soon. But the woman that came to buy this place, she basically noticed this thing on her leg, on Renata's leg, and she, of course, Rinata basically, she had no choice but to explain the whole situation and how basically she got under this house arrest. And she basically told her the whole story. She explained why she stood up for that woman and how basically she put on fire that entire place. She basically burned to the ground or something, like she caused a lot of chaos, and after that she was put under this house arrest. And while she is so emotionally, I would say, defeated, because this whole story just, and this situation with selling this place, it's all just making her even more, oh, even more, I would say, weak, because she seems to be like stable at some point, but at some point she's really losing the control of the situation. And this is somehow basically making this woman rethink her, offer, or at least basically she seems to be confused after this conversation with Renata. She left this place, and the movie is not explicitly telling if she ever bought this place or if they kept, receiving offers from anybody. But still, the final of this movie was that Rinata, she was able to run away. She basically escaped this captivity, I would say, because even though this is house arrest and she is there for a reason, but she was more of a captive woman rather than a criminal being placed under house arrest. She seemed like pretty smart woman who is aware of her situation, who knows why she did what she did. She knows exactly how to, get out of the situation, but she prefers to run away, basically. And after she left this place, her father basically realized that she's just, she's now basically running. And at this point, the movie is just concluding, but there is no answer to what happens after that, because this is pretty much the ending. And as far as I'm concerned, the movie is just an anthology about different women and how their stories intertwined, and how they basically run into each other at some point. And at the same time, basically the main character is still Renata, and she is the anchor of this whole movie. And while there is no answer to the final and how she ended up after leaving that place, after getting out of her house arrest, the movie is still just keeping its dark and mysterious vibe. It's literally just one of the most, I would say, weird and at the same time really interesting conversations, interesting interactions between different characters. The movie is just keeping you, on the edge of your seat, and you still just, you're not sure if you're really just, understanding what's going on, because at some point it becomes really crazy. At some point the characters, Renata specifically, she starts acting pretty weird, but minute later she starts to, you know, she basically starts to think, to rationalize her actions, and next minute she is again going crazy. So this is pretty much what this movie is. She's like jumping from, you know, stable to like insane in just 1 minute, you know. And her basically mood changes like, you know, every single minute. She literally just she was basically complimenting her sister, her career, and saying how good her work is. She was really just, you know, having a good conversation with her sister, but next minute she basically downplaying her as an actress. She is like, you know, seeing like everybody basically can be an actor because any basically human being is pretending, constantly just pretending, and there is no like nothing special about your work, you know. So from one mood to another, from just stable behavior, normal behavior, she went to this crazy woman in just within just one short conversation. And she's going through a lot of similar situations throughout the movie, whether it's her sister or it's her therapist. She's keeping that pattern, you know. She seems like thinking and, you know, giving like adequate answers, but at the same time, like, you know, next minute she's just running away from her therapist and she's going to hook up with her friend. So this is pretty much everything about this movie, and if you want to just watch the whole movie, you will see the story of multiple women. You will see like really interesting stories, but I was trying basically to focus more on the main character, still introducing you some of the other characters, but for this specific stream, I was trying basically to, you know, focus only on Renata and Rinata's house arrest. So basically, being locked up in this apartment and interacting only through this window and choosing between going to a prison or being a brain dead person under house arrest, and not allowed basically to spend time with anybody, and still being able to bring in your loved one. And then after that, selling the very house that she was spending her house arrest, in, selling this very place to just a random woman, or a woman who just, came for completely different reason. Because initially, basically, this woman came to visit Renata's father's girlfriend, this woman, and she loved this place, and she made that offer basically. So she didn't come initially to buy this place, but she realized that she likes this place, and she, went to this living room. She found Rinata, who is under house arrest. They immediately hit it off because they both work in the same industry, even though the woman that is buying this place or wants to buy this place, she is an owner of her brokerage firm, and Renata is just an employee of one of those brokerage firms. But her knowledge in that industry, her, I would say, intuition, and the way that basically she was talking about the, apartment, and how basically she knows perfectly the neighborhood, all the houses, and other choices for this woman, to buy. The way she kept that conversation was one of the most interesting, I would say, moments of this movie. Her conversation with her therapist, and this conversation with this, with this woman. So two basically moments with therapist and with this woman, and her moment with Miranda when they reunited, basically. Those basically three key moments, I would say, they were the most interesting parts of this movie for me personally, because this is, for example, her final guest, her final conversation in this movie, and after that she is running away from this place, and she's probably breaking the rules of her house arrest, and still, before leaving this place, she gave the perfect monologue. She basically expressed perfectly the feelings, all the emotions that she felt when basically she was standing up for that innocent woman, and the situation that led to her house arrest, and that basically public affray happened in a shop, the shop that she set on fire, and she was arrested. All the situation and how she explains this situation is just, probably is the best, is the most interesting performance of this actress, of this character. So she impressed this woman, and at the same time she kind of pushed back her, because it seems like she's not going to buy this place anymore after listening to that crazy story. And Renata, she's still being under arrest, under house arrest. She's leaving this place, she's running away, and she is leaving everybody, all the viewers, just wondering what's happening next, what's happening after that. Because after that, we just see the room just, and no Miranda, no Rinata, all the things, and just nobody. So this is the ending of the Follies Las Locuras movie. And if you want basically a short video, drop a like, and this is the indication of the interest. I would say, like, not the amount of likes, but I would decide on this stream's performance and on how much people interested in this specific story or the subject. The house arrest, the woman who is being locked up, but not in a prison. This is something new. At the same time, there is not a lot of to tell, because everything just, happening in just one single place, and you cannot just, you cannot tell something about other characters, because I'm only focusing on this specific character. But still, if you like this, let me know, and just drop a comment, or any reaction is important, because I see the feedback and I can decide where to put my effort, where to spend more time, where to basically, what direction I want to go next. Because I want to make videos, and I want to be sure that people would like it. So thank you for watching this stream, and see you next time. Goodbye.